Thank you all for joining in. This is our Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We are streaming live on YouTube right now, so please share this video with your friends and family. Also on our Facebook Live as well too. And first, we'll have some introductions and some welcomes, and we'll start with our mayor, the City of Richfield Mayor Maria Gonzalez Reagan.
Great. Thank you so much, Keisha. I'm super excited to be here with everyone today. I am excited to be here with you all, and I just wanted to give you a welcome for attending our event today, which is focused on preventing, denouncing, and healing domestic abuse in our community. Unfortunately, domestic abuse touches us all and touches us all of our communities. So this event is super important. I'm Maria Regan Gonzalez. I'm the proud mayor of Richfield, and I'm here to give you your thanks for participating in this event on behalf of the entire City Council. And I want to thank Patricia Iban, Chief Henthorn, Monique from Hennepin County, all the folks on the call today, and everyone who helped in organizing the event. I hope folks enjoy our event. They learn a lot of new information, and they share the information with their families, with their friends, and with their neighbors. So thank you, welcome. And I'll actually just do a welcome briefly in Spanish as well. So, gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros hoy para prevenir, denunciar y sanar el abuso doméstico en nuestra comunidad. Yo soy María Regan González, la alcaldesa de Richfield, y estoy aquí para darle la bienvenida de parte del Consejo Municipal de la ciudad de Richfield. Mil gracias a Patricia Iban, Chief Henthorn, Monique del Condado y todos que están aquí hoy y que tomaron parte en organizar el evento. Espero que disfruten la información hoy y que comparten todo con sus familias, sus vecinos y sus amigos. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. We thank you for that. And just for to let everyone know, today we are joined by the JCPP Joint Community Police Partnership Program from Hennepin County, along with the Richfield Police Department that's hosting this event and resource for everyone. And then we'll have a welcome from our Richfield Police Department, our Chief Henthorn.
Thanks, Keisha. Just to dovetail on what the mayor said, it's great to be here. This is a great event as we're in Domestic Awareness Month. As Chief of Police for the City of Richfield, domestic violence is a serious concern for our community and also our police department. We work vigorously with our county attorney, with Cornerstone and our advocacy services and all the victims to make sure that they have their rights heard and then we prosecute those cases. As the mayor had said, domestic violence unfortunately touches a lot of people. It touched me in 2009 when a partner who I'd worked with for over 5 years was murdered. And her name is emblazoned in bricks at Cornerstone. So it does touch everybody. And our job as a police department is to educate, but also move forward to hopefully rid domestic violence within our community. So thank you for hosting this event.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. And again, like he mentioned, the ones that will be participating in this event, and those were the Richfield Police Department, Cornerstone, CUHCC Clinic, Oasis for Youth, and then our Minnesota Legal Aid. And so we'll go into our presentations. And the first presenter that we will have that will speak on our domestic violence will be from the Richfield Police Department. And this is our investigator, Miranda Wagner.
My name is Miranda Wagner. I'm an investigator here with Richfield Police Department. I've been with the agency for almost 6 years. I've been doing investigations for about 4, and I work primarily domestic family violence and sexual violence. And as soon as we get my PowerPoint up, I can share a little bit more about my role and about the role of my partners. As our mayor and our chief has already shared, domestic violence is one of those things that the Richfield Police Department cares very deeply about. And my goal is here just to talk a little bit about what that looks like when we address it from a legal perspective, and what that looks like for us to address it as a police department using some other methods like advocacy and social workers and other outreach methods. Domestic violence is something that encompasses the actual violence, the assault or abuse occurring within a domestic setting. In a domestic setting would be, excuse me, those things that occur within a marriage or a family or cohabitation, so between roommates or other living circumstances. Um, Domestic violence is sometimes used as a synonym for intimate partner violence, which is committed by one person in a relationship that's intimate against another person. However, I think it's important to know that domestic violence doesn't involve simply that intimate relationship or that romantic relationship. It does involve and impact individuals and families in other types of way as well. According to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 12 men experience some sort of intimate partner violence, specifically in a lifetime. And although I don't have a stat to provide, I would imagine that domestic violence in one way or another impacts families at a larger rate. When we're looking at how the police would respond to a domestic violence incident, as most of you would know, that it starts with that 911 call. And that 911 call, or even a non-emergency call to either our front desk or dispatch, it usually comes from either the victims themselves. Sometimes it comes from our abusers or our suspects that have just a different take on what may have happened. And then a lot of times it might come from witnesses that are either audibly hearing things or physically seeing things, or other third parties such as concerned family members or other concerned citizens. Once we get that 911 call, the dispatcher is going to solicit as much information about what that person is experiencing or seeing to relay on to the officers, because these do tend to be some of the most unpredictably risky calls that we go to, since we are kind of inserting ourselves into a really intimate and emotional situation, or anyway, possibly very intimate and emotional. Once the officers arrive on scene, our first goal is to make sure that everybody's safe, that everybody who needs medical care, that process is getting started either by the officers or by fire or other medical staff, paramedics. And if there are weapons or any other risk involved, that we are controlling that situation before we are starting to figure out the information as to what happened. We're going to communicate with those involved and make observations on a scene, whether that's observations of injury or observations that something had happened, such as an overturned room. And then based on that information, the officers that are there are going to usually consult one another based on what they're being told and make a decision on the most appropriate course of action. You know, those actions might be something as minimal or least intruding as diffusing or mitigating the situation, to providing resources or other supports, such as providing transportation or set up with an advocate immediately, or some sort of shelter, separating people to cool down, or making that arrest of the aggressing person. If an arrest occurs, the documentation of that evidence is going to only increase. Given Richfield Police Department has body cameras, we're going to capture a lot of that initial evidence through that way. But we would take further recorded statements, take photographs of the environment. We might talk with other people, neighbors, people that called in the incident, other witnesses, and ultimately we'll give that aggressing person, that person that's arrested, the suspect, an opportunity to provide their version of events. We legally have to give them the opportunity. Whether or not they want to take that opportunity is up to them. And then we'll collect any of that evidence, such as weapons or anything else that's obviously involved. And I think it's important to note, when we're looking at whether or not an officer is going to be making an arrest, they have to rely on what the criminal elements are as outlined in our statutes for domestic abuse and other similar type crimes, to make sure that when we make that arrest, that follow through from our court system is possible. So if we've got enough evidence, which for the police department, for police officers is probable cause, we'll make that arrest. If we have that level of evidence where we'll make that arrest, we are bound by state statute to make that arrest. But sometimes we do face limitations in being able to intervene in that way. And that just presents itself in numerous ways, and I can cover those here shortly. This would be a great point to have the PowerPoint available. So I'm sorry you don't have that. But when we're talking about domestic assault specifically, and not about the other types of crime that often are involved in domestic abuse, such as interfering with 911 calls or harassment or stalking, court order violations, etc. We're talking about the Minnesota State Statute 609.2242. And our basic domestic assault, and by basic I just mean like where we start off is going to be a misdemeanor, and that outlines us with an actor is committing an act with intent to cause fear of immediate bodily harm or death, or they intentionally inflict or attempt to inflict bodily harm. And to get that aggravated to a gross misdemeanor or a felony, we gather information based on criminal history. You have to have a prior conviction specifically within the last 10 years to aggravate. The only time where it's a felony automatically is when we have evidence that strangulation occurred, and that's cutting off airflow or blood flow to the brain. And when I talked about the other types of crimes that are influencing domestic assault, that's not a domestic assault offense specifically, those are what we call a qualified domestic violence related offense. And those include domestic assault, violation of court orders such as an order for protection, harassment restraining order, or a domestic abuse no contact order, prior convictions for assault 1 through 5, malicious punishment of a child, criminal sexual conduct 1 through 4, interfering with a 911 call, stalking or harassment, threats of violence, or terroristic threats, as it's also known, murder 1 and 2, female genital mutilation, and non-consensual dissemination of sexual images. So any of those prior convictions of those crimes are what's included in being able to aggravate the basic domestic assault that starts out as a misdemeanor and might end as a felony. It's important to know, again, as I had mentioned previously, police officers are starting out as strangers, interfering or coming into a situation that's very emotional as and very well known to the people that are involved, and oftentimes don't happen with witnesses or other people involved. So sometimes we get there and victims are in a difficult position where they aren't willing or unable to provide information to help us arrest suspects, or they don't want them arrested or charged because they have circumstances I'll describe later that get in that way. But if the evidence is overwhelming or obvious, we can still make that arrest without the victim's willingness for that to happen or with their resistance of that happening. Every domestic assault call is very different. We are taking in the information that's available to us at that time. Sometimes we have prior information depending on how often we might deal with a specific family or couple or household. But a lot of the times we don't know what had sparked the violent incident or a lot of the historical past. And sometimes we have incidences that are abusive, but they're not quite to that criminal level, such as verbal arguments or some types of emotional abuse and intimidations. And in those circumstances, an arrest isn't always going to be the most helpful intervention. And that's where we get a lot of our help from our social workers and our advocates. Some of the traits of domestic assault. A lot of our response to domestic violence is reactive. Although we, like this presentation alone, we try to get out in front of it and be proactive, and I'll discuss some ways that we can work as a society to prevent domestic violence before it occurs. Once the police are getting involved, a lot of the times it's a reactive measure to something that has already happened. And as such, when you're talking about investigating such crimes, there's not really a way to proactively investigate other than just to make sure that when we notice those signs, that we are providing victims and families those resources to help prevent it from happening in the future. To investigate these crimes, you need three things. And you need a victim, you need the criminal elements of a crime, and you need to have an incident location or jurisdiction. So you can have a place to start and make sure that if it happened in Richfield, it's a Richfield police investigation. And if it happened elsewhere, that we're providing those victims that information to allow something to happen if they left the city that it happened in for safety. Sometimes we will get domestic violence or just domestic assault reports after the fact. And we call those delayed reports. And a lot of the time that's because there's fear from the victim, they're being extorted, they're being intimidated. But these circumstances will present some challenges in collecting evidentiary support for courts to navigate later. Witnesses can be very helpful, and we might see witnesses through neighbors or community members, family, or friends, particularly if the victim reaches out to them for help in the past when they're not quite ready to report themselves. But a lot of these incidents might involve solely just the victim and the suspect. And when there's not neutral information of the event, that can limit what our ability is to do to navigate who is and who is not telling the truth of what had happened. And even post-arrest, we might see some resistance from victims due to complications that these situations can cause the family after an arrest and during the court process, whether that's just childcare concerns, financial concerns, house safety. There's emotional attachment to abusers a lot of the time, and I'm sure our advocates and others will touch base on that a little bit. So even when we make that arrest, sometimes we still have those further recurring domestic violence complications. Not to say that an arrest is not extremely important. It's just good to know that that's not an end-all be-all solution to a lot of these problems. That said, if you're a victim that has experienced domestic violence in the past, and despite limitations, we always encourage you to contact the police for help. If we can't provide advice or input, at minimum, we can try to help through engaging the suspect in the criminal justice system through an arrest or through attempting to get charges through our prosecuting attorneys. An investigation can occur anytime within 3 years of the incident occurring, and that's per our statute of limitation. And it depends on the criminal elements. So I'm talking about kind of your, again, I don't like the term basic, but your most basic domestic assault incident. That's restricted. But once you're looking at maybe more severe or significant elements, that time frame might open a little bit. And if you don't want the police to be involved, but you want some other measure to maybe limit that contact or to provide another veil of safety, you can file for court orders through the county that you live in. Those are things, again, the police enforce, but we do not issue or apply for you or anything. And those are harassment restraining orders and our order for protections. And those other things that you can utilize are those alternative resources that I was suggesting earlier and that you'll learn more about today, which is the advocacy, the social workers, the therapists, your families and friends, and letting those individuals provide you that support that the criminal justice system might not. And I promise I'm almost done. I know the PowerPoint issues caused me to go a little over. Preventing domestic assault, like I said, limitations for the police to do that, but we want to make sure that our community is educated on how they can make those steps or take those steps. And a big part of it is knowing the signs of how to recognize whether you yourself might be in an abusive relationship or somebody that you love or care about. Violence can present itself at various times in a relationship. It can be very early on, or it can take a long time, weeks, months, years to appear. Some of the warning signs to be aware of is a partner getting jealous with the time that you spend away from other people or from them with others. A partner who discourages you from spending that time away from them in any capacity, whether that's employment, school, hobbies, etc. A partner who embarrasses or shames you or controls all the financial decisions and other life decisions, whether major or minor. A partner who makes you feel guilty for problems in the relationship or prevents you from working or engaging in those hobbies. They intentionally might damage your property, whether or not it's shared or otherwise. They might threaten violence against you, your pets, or someone you love, or threaten you in another way, like extortion over things like immigration status or housing, or again, finances, anything like that. They pressure you to have sex even when you don't want to, or engage in some type of sexual activity. They intimidate you, sometimes with weapons. They attempt or succeed in controlling decisions, or they limit your sense of or actual independence. If you see those signs, don't ignore them. We hear the same thing from a lot of people when these things get reported, and sometimes, unfortunately, too late, that people around a victim heard, saw, or perceived domestic violence occurring, but they didn't want to get involved, especially when you hear things, because that's most often what it is. You don't see these things as often. A lot of the times it's hearing the neighbors or someone on a phone call that is clearly or possibly engaged in a violent situation, yelling and screaming, and things are bumping around and breaking. It's a good time to get involved. Again, a verbal argument is not illegal, but us intervening at that time might prevent it from escalating to a physical interaction. Lend an ear to those people that are reaching out for help. A lot of victims don't, because of the complications it might provide them, or they're not ready to talk about it. But if those people know they have someone trustworthy to talk about, it would really help them in the future when they might be prepared to report to the police or obtain some other types of assistance. Be available to those people if it does escalate to a dangerous situation. Be ready and prepared to help. Advocate for those people. Check in with them regularly, that you're ensuring that they're safe. And when domestic violence victims reaching out to you, write things down. These incidents as a what we call an outcry witness, or a third party witness, could be helpful. You're documenting injuries, places things happen, dates things happen when that victim is incapable or not ready to report themselves, but might be at a later time. That evidence could be critical in addressing that behavior later in our criminal justice system. And it might help in any kind of civil engagement that they might have, whether that's child custody or any other type of civil remedy that they might take. Hey, there's my PowerPoint. We're almost done. We're on slide 8, almost wrapping up with that. And then educate our youth and our young adults on positive communications, boundaries, appropriate dating, relationship dynamics, and healthy sexuality. I think a lot of things can be prevented in the future when we encourage our youth to have a good sense of self safety and self-reporting and self-advocacy. And after a domestic assault occurs, there's a slide here that's providing a bunch of different information. It's providing our 911 call. Never feel bad about calling 911, even if you don't think it's an emergency. They're not going to scold you or anything. But if you're not comfortable in calling 911, call our main line, which is 612-861-9800. Contact hospital or medical facilities for help, advocates or emergency resources, such as Cornerstone, Casa de Esperanza, or the Domestic Abuse Service Center. And if you don't want to work with a stranger or professional, talk to somebody in your life that you trust. Don't bear the burden of domestic violence on yourself. And I talked a little bit about why some victims don't report already. And that kind of concludes my portion of the presentation. If there are questions that come up, just call our main line and ask for me, and I will do my best to get back to you. We stay pretty busy here in Richfield with investigations, so email might be the best way. And if there are any new reports that follow this information, just make sure that you're calling 911 and reaching out to your local law enforcement and your patrol officers, who are going to be kind of your first step of reaching out and communicating with the police.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Miranda, for that information. It is definitely needed, and we definitely appreciate you taking the time out and presenting that for us. And for our online people that are watching, please just bear with us, and we thank you for being here and through our trial and error here with our team's meeting. So just bear with us. I think that you will enjoy each presentation and the information that will be provided. And so we'll have next is from Cornerstone, and that will be May L.
Hi, everyone. My name is May. I am a part of the Criminal Civil Justice Advocate team here at Cornerstone. We do work with as partners with the City of Richfield on domestic violence and sexual assault cases. Before I get started, I do want to apologize. The number on the screen is my old office number, so it is not the correct number. If anyone ever needs to reach me, I can be reached at my work cell phone number, which is 612-460-7893. And if I need to give that again at the end, I definitely can do that as well. If we can move on to the next slide here. So Cornerstone was funded in 1983, and our mission statement is to help create communities where individuals and families are safe and where children can thrive. We advocate, educate, and lead the way to social change. Let's go to the next slide, please. Domestic violence, sexual violence, dating violence, and human trafficking are crimes, and they are a violation of human rights. The use of violence is a choice that can be prevented, and all community members have a responsibility to confront the roots of violence to help eliminate oppression. Our philosophy here at Cornerstone is to build a society in which violence in families and relationships no longer exist. Cornerstone is a nonprofit organization located in Bloomington that serves victims, survivors of domestic assault, general crime, sexual assault, human trafficking. Cornerstone works with victims of all genders, races, ethnicities, natural origin, ages, sexual orientation or identities, education, and disabilities. Our programs include our emergency services team, our community and economic empowerment programs, our criminal and civil justice programs, our general crime victims programs, our child, youth, and family programs, and our Day One program. So while I won't be going into depth about every program that we have here at Cornerstone, if you're interested in knowing which programs, each program consists of, our website does have a detailed explanation on each program here at Cornerstone. I will be focusing today on domestic violence and our criminal and civil justice team, but I did just want to add in that our general crime team does handle crimes unrelated to domestic violence. And for those who are looking for internship and volunteer opportunities, we do have a list of internship and volunteers opportunities available on our website as well, and I will touch base very briefly about that later on in our presentation too. Victim survivors will often have their first encounter with our organization through our emergency services program. So what happens is typically when officers are on scene, they will connect victims over to our 24/7 emergency services team. Our emergency services team is focused on serving victim survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking and their immediate safety needs. So this includes addressing shelter needs for anyone who needs a safe place to stay, to allow for them and their children to escape dangerous or unsafe situations. This isn't just limited to finding shelter space, it's also making sure that victim survivors are made aware of the services that we offer here at Cornerstone so that proper referrals can be made. For example, if somebody wants to speak with somebody from my team, our shelter team can send us an email to make sure that we're doing the proper follow-up and making sure that we have all the correct information needed to follow up with that participant. So part of our role here at Cornerstone is also to provide victim survivors with resources, and a large part of our referrals are for counseling and therapy resources. We have resources that will help victim survivors find counseling, whether they have health insurance or not. A lot of resources available offer low to no cost or sliding scale fees for those who may not have funds to support them through counseling, or for those who do not have health insurance to help cover their bills. For those who do have health insurance, we also have resources to help them find something that might be accepted through their coverage. If you or anyone you know is interested in finding counseling or maybe attending a support group, you can call our 24-hour hotline, which will be listed at the end as well, but it is 952-884-0330. Again, part of our services here at Cornerstone is to provide our participants with resources and referrals. It's not just limited to counseling resources, but say if someone needs housing resources, while we don't have housing readily available, we do have resources that we can provide our participants with who may be searching for new housing opportunities. So, for example, if someone is looking for longer term support around housing, whether it be financial literacy or finding ways to overcome certain barriers that they may be facing that is preventing them from finding housing or getting approved for housing, our community program can help provide longer term support and making sure that our participants' needs are being met and that goals are being created. So even if it's a service that we may not provide directly for whatever reason, we have resources and referrals that we can always provide participants with. Much like myself, we have advocates throughout Cornerstone who can present to different organizations and groups if ever needed as well. So if this is something that you're interested in having someone present at, you're always more than welcome to reach out to us regarding having a speaker at your event. At the end of my presentation, I will have a list of numbers that you can reach out to, but if you go to our website, under the Education and Training tab, we do have a page dedicated to scheduling a speaker to come to your event. We have plenty of internship and volunteer opportunities as well for anyone who wants to serve and give back to their communities. I personally did start off my career here at Cornerstone as an intern while working on my undergrad degree. So for any students or anyone in general who is looking for an internship opportunity, we usually have postings year round for people to look into and apply for in case you're interested in learning more or getting hands-on experience around working with victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. As I mentioned earlier, I am part of the Criminal and Civil Justice Intervention Team, CCJI for short, because it can be a mouthful. The CCJI team works within the criminal and civil court system and partners specifically with the cities of Bloomington, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Edina, Minneapolis Airport Commission, Maple Grove, Minneapolis, Richfield, Robbinsdale, and St. Louis Park on criminal cases. We also work with victim survivors throughout Hennepin County on civil cases. So we follow criminal cases through the court system. We help file order for protections and harassment restraining orders. We accompany petitioners to court for civil matters. We help them with safety planning, breaking their leases. And again, we provide referrals to other programs, both within and outside of our agency. So typically, our first contact with participants are through the police reports we receive. So once we receive a police report, we call on the listed victims. We inform them of the services that we provide within our organization. Afterwards, if a case gets charged out, advocates on our team follow the case through the criminal court process, so long as it's a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor case. If it is a felony case, that is something that the county handles. So we typically connect them over to Hennepin County Victim Witness, who would be their advocates throughout that felony case. Our role throughout the court case is to make sure that prosecution receives the victim's input on a case outcome and any safety concerns that they may have. Victims at sentencing always have the right to give what's called a victim impact statement, which our advocates also help support victims through. So this means that we give them the power to write it, but we go over their statement with them, we make any changes necessary, and we help provide them support during their statement. So whether that means presenting it on their behalf or just being there to provide them with emotional support while they read their statement out loud in court. The same goes with jury trials. So while victims are giving testimonies, advocates are there to provide our participants with support throughout the court process. The criminal court process, we have advocates who attend every court proceeding to keep our participants informed of what is going on in court, regardless if they are present or not. We relay over to them any offers made, and we make sure that prosecution, again, most importantly, is receiving their input while they're in court. Our advocates on our team also provide support within the civil court system as well. So we help write order for protections, harassment restraining orders, and we attend civil court hearings on these matters. So while we are not there to represent them, since we are not attorneys, we can help prepare them for what court may look like and let them know kind of what they can expect throughout their civil hearing. Although we do not have attorneys here at Cornerstone, we can again help provide our participants with referrals for attorneys in case that's something that they're interested in having during their court case. Some may be familiar with our Day One Crisis Line. It is a 24-hour hotline for victims, survivors of domestic assault, sexual assault, and human trafficking that may be looking for emotional support, on-the-spot safety planning, and or resources and referrals. A lot of participants use it more so for emergency shelter referrals, but Day One does provide referrals for other agencies as well to meet other people's wants and needs. So for example, support groups, housing referrals, etc. They do not do just Hennepin County specific, unlike Cornerstone. Day One is statewide. So even if they live in Dakota County, if they live up in Duluth, wherever they're calling from in the state of Minnesota, Day One would be able to help them find services for whatever is near them. Day One also provides services through text, calls, emails, and chat, making it more accessible for everyone. So say if you know somebody who might not have a working phone, but they do have connection to Wi-Fi, they can use the chat function on the Day One website to chat with an advocate right away. So we do have a little bit more accessibility around that. So due to COVID, many of our advocates are still working remotely, but we do have staff still answering our 24-hour hotline. So whether that be Day One or through our emergency services program, we have advocates who are checking voicemails and returning calls within business hours. We do have a list of numbers here on our screen that you can call. And if you're not sure what service you're looking for exactly, you can call our main line and we can try getting you directed to the right program. If you are in need of assistance with a criminal or civil issue, you can call our criminal civil justice line and leave us a voicemail. We do have advocates checking those voicemails daily and can get connected back to you within a business day. If you are looking for domestic violence shelter in the state of Minnesota or looking for services across the state of Minnesota too, again, you can call our Day One call center for 24-hour assistance. If you are looking, or if you're a victim of theft, assault, harassment that does not involve an intimate partner, family member, or roommate, we do have a general crime victim services line that can provide further resources. And again, if anyone needs to get a hold of me, I know my number on the first screen was wrong, but you guys can always give me a call at 612-460-7893. Or again, you can call our CCGI line and leave us a voicemail and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Mercedes Moreno. I work at Cook Clinic, a community university healthcare center. And I will explain a little bit what our agency is. So to be a federally qualified community health center, we need to be located in a medically underserved area. We are on 2001 Bloomington Avenue South in Minneapolis. We serve all regardless of the ability to pay, have a sliding fee scale, maintain a core set of services, and be governed by a community board of directors that is formed with patients members. We have many services in one location. Our clinic was founded like in 51 years ago, I believe, in South Minneapolis. So we have access for most of the people that come to our clinic are immigrants. And we address the health inequities, and we have experts in providing culturally competent and patient-centered care. I will explain a little bit everything that we do. So medical, dental, mental health services, and in this umbrella, we have psychiatry and therapy, the arms worker, case management, advocates as myself, and supportive services. So we provide preventive care for everybody, confidential care for teens, family planning, prenatal and pregnancy care, travel immunization, clinical pharmacy consultation, and also assisting obtaining medication. Sometimes people cannot afford it, so the clinic assists them to find them a cheaper way to do it, to get them. Lead screening for children, culturally specific diabetes education, and chronic diseases management. So the dental services is for all ages too, but we have some services more for children or more for adults. So we do preventive and restorative care, pediatric and geriatric dentistry, and you will excuse me for all these hard words for me. A limit periodontal services care, endodontic services, and prosthodontic services too. Individuals, couples, family, and children, and group therapy in our psychiatry and therapy services. We culturally competent diagnosis evaluation, intellectual and personality evaluation, medication management. We do sometimes have therapists that speak different languages, so we don't have to use interpreters. The Adult Rehabilitative Mental Health Services Program, ARPS, their workers We have a group of maybe 6 or 7, and they work with the patient's social competencies, personal and emotional adjustment, and independent living in community skills. The arms worker instruct and assist and support in areas such as medication education. Many patients need that assistance, and the arms worker are helping them to do it. They can go to their homes, and so they also help them to do the basic social and living skills, mental illness symptoms management, household management, and employment skills. They help them to do, forms and fill it up and assist them to bring it to whatever they need to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do. We are 2 advocates, and we do dual advocacy. We do domestic abuse and sexual assault. And we, as different of some agencies, we go to the community, we go to their homes, we go to meet them wherever they feel comfortable. Uh, right now, we are in our office sometimes, and also we can go now a little to see them outside. So I don't know when the snow starts, but they can come to our clinic if they are able. So advocacy is defined as that any action that speaks in favor, supports, or defends on behalf of others. Is a positive support for survivors. We work with women, men, children, and anybody that come to us. We offer information, help them assisting with resources and filing out the paperwork. We provide in-person counseling, providing information and crime prevention, transportation to the appointments, wherever they need to go. If we can, we take them to the appointments. We provide information to sometimes for the legal rights and the protections. We do the emotional support, and sometimes, not all the time, but when we can, we provide support groups in Spanish. So we have the victim with a safety plan, and with crime victim reparation, we fill it up the documents for them, and we help assist attending the court hearings, criminal or civil, reporting to the police. Sometimes they feel more comfortable reporting in our office. So we call the police and they come to our office. And, they feel more comfortable sometimes doing that way. We assist them to do orders for protection, find shelters. Sometimes if they need to leave, we can find shelters for them and notify if the perpetrator or the inmate is released too. I also want to let you know that my coworker is Hmong, and we both do as much as we can to help anybody or any language. And we have people in our clinic all the time. They speak different languages, and I will tell you a little bit about that. So the supporting services for the patient, we help patients to apply for insurance programs through MSure, through Minnesota Family Planning Program. We can also assist the patients with Medicare in getting additional coverage or help in paying for Medicare premiums. They help patients apply for our sliding discount, and depends on the household size and income. So we are very fortunate to have Stinson as pro bono, and also we work with partnering with legal aid. We are very fortunate because nowadays it's very hard to find attorneys, and we have many people that needed those services. So Stinson is helping us with family law, such as divorces and child support, guardianship and estate planning, immigration, housing, government benefits, and other issues as determined by the legal committees. They choose the cases, and sometimes they have to refuse cases, but they're being very good taking hard cases too sometimes. So as I said before, we have the main 5 languages: the Spanish, Somali, Hmong, Lao, and Vietnamese in our office every day. But if we do have any other patient that come to the clinic with a different language, we have services with remote, but they will see the interpreted face to face. So this is my information. The clinic number 612-301-3433 for any services that you need. And my phone number is 612-558-9977. And again, my name is Mercedes Moreno. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Yeah, that was just an echo that's happening. I don't know what that is. So we do apologize about that, but thank you for providing that information. And next we have Jasmine from our Oasis for Youth. I hope that's
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jasmine Green. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Senior Program Manager over at Oasis for Youth. You can push to the next slide. So Oasis for Youth, our mission. We are a trusted resource in the community, committed to elevating young people in their own community. Our vision is that we imagine our communities of Bloomington, Richford, and Edina as places where young people have an opportunity to thrive. And then these are some of the values that we sort of stand by, and these were created by our staff, our young people, stakeholders in the community, and really have just kind of formulated more recently. And I really, yeah, these values are core to us. I encourage everybody to check out our website to go a little bit more in depth. But we definitely value young people, their voice. We value connections, a sense of belonging, prevention, justice and dismantling racism and poverty, and then innovation. So some history. This lovely picture here is some of our founders, well, our founders, all young, beautiful women from Bloomington, Richford, and Edina community who sort of saw the need back in 2010. Oak Grove Presbyterian Church has hosted us, and we were founded and sort of have been in that place since the opening. And I think one other thing to share is that Oak Grove, it continues to be a pillar congregation in the community. Cornerstone was also started there. And right now we are hosting Loaves and Fishes as Creekside works to be testing something or the other for COVID. Next slide, please. So the growth of Oasis. So again, mentioned that we opened in 2010. We've seen a steady increase in services offered young people who are utilizing our resource center. And we really do feel like it comes from word of mouth. We have really strong partnership with schools in the community, and then the case management relationships. I have been at Oasis for 7 years. I'm actually the veteran staff. I've been there longer than everybody. And so I was there for about a year and a half before we hired our executive director, Nicole Mills, in 2015. Since then, we've grown to an all paid volunteer positions when it was just really volunteers and board members and myself. So the growth has been real. We have increased programming services, and then youth engagement opportunities as well. And we also feel like we have a deeper understanding of the suburban young people and sort of what those needs are. This is just a cute little photo of some of our folks, a beautiful spread of folks. Next slide. So young people are critical to our organization. At Oasis, we believe that young people with lived experience are experts of their own journeys. We also believe that they should have input on what's offered, services provided, programming, and even who we hire. Our youth advisory board and internship programs are vital to our growth and development. And then we host a variety of gatherings, parties, and youth groups, all with the support and input of young people. So what Oasis does, we work with young people ages 16 into their 25th birthday who may be experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. We try to provide basic needs first and foremost. Case management is offered at all of our programs, but is not required. And more importantly, we work to be a safe space for young people and just provide connections to safe and caring adults. So more about what we do. We do a ton of supporting young people with transportation. So we're able to provide bus tokens, bus passes, gas cards, a lot of rides to resources happen. Food is essential. We have a unique partnership with Veep, which allows our young people to access their food pantry barrier free, which is really, really nice. But in addition to Veep, we do a lot of work to connect young people to other like food shelves and access to food. It definitely happens quite a bit. We also have food all the time at our drop-in center, so good to know. We do a lot of supporting young people with basic needs, so like clothing. We do have a clothing closet. We provide hygiene supplies, blankets, household supplies, a ton of supporting young people with uniforms and shoes. And then we recently experienced a flood, so this feels not good to say, but we are under construction right now, but would normally have offered or be able to offer showers and laundry facility to our young people. Coming right back up soon. Next slide, please. So addressing housing needs, we do a ton of obviously trying to prevent evictions if possible, and then supporting young people's like own networks. So a lot of working with families, a lot of working with young people who are unaccompanied, young people who are couch hopping, just doing a ton of that. But we do have funds to prevent an eviction if possible. It really would just be, it would mean that a young person would not be eligible for county assistance or be denied. And so that's our only biggest barrier to accessing those funds. We do a ton of supporting young people getting connected to emergency shelters, and then also are able to help people get into more long-term sustainable housing options. So both transitional and permanent supportive housing. We do have a scattered site housing program ourselves, where young people get a rent subsidy and some case management support. Right now, we can have up to 4 young people or families in our program. So some more of what case managers do. A lot of this work is done with our young people. So case managers and young people sit down to create goal plans that will include all the things, stabilizing housing, things around employment, education, getting them connected to like physical and mental health, resources, applying for county benefits. We do a ton of supporting young people with obtaining their vital documents, so birth certificates, IDs, all of that stuff, free of charge. We have access to those basic needs as mentioned before, and then we do a ton of connecting young people to other resources in the community. And I added that last bullet of almost anything a young person identifies, because as a case manager, I do feel like your day is always different, and sometimes you're taking somebody to court, next day you're taking to the doctor appointment. It really is driven by the young people and what their individual needs are. So where we are, I'm actually going to skip past this slide because I'm going to talk more about all of these more in depth individually. All right, so Drop In, which is our flagship program, again, is our space that is inside of Oak Grove Presbyterian Church. There is where all of our like hygiene, food shelf, all of those things are available. It's really just a hang spot for young people. There's a lot of video games that happen, a lot of connections made. Case managers are there and available for young people, but again, young people do not have to engage in case management if they don't want. I think another thing I just want to give a shout out to our drop-in space is that we really feel like young people from our communities won't often go into the cities to access some of those resources. And so we do try to bring as many resources possible to our drop-in center. And so that'll include places in partners like Bloomington Public Health, Youth Law Project, Canvas Health. So a lot of those resources are actually coming to our drop-in center on a consistent basis. Our mobile outreach program, and this is actually a program that I oversee. We are in about 9 different schools throughout the week. My staff are the case managers, and that includes some alternative schools in Normandale Community College. And we have some new vans that are pretty important. They were critical during the pandemic. We really tried to bring a lot of our resources in case management and drop-in fields to our young people, or where they were most comfortable. We are part of the Streetworks Collaborative, so we do partner with about 13 different agencies across the Twin Cities to continue to meet the needs of young people, and do some of this outreach work in collaboration. Our Mall of America program, which is super cool. It began in 2016. It's the first of its kind in the nation. When we first started, there were a lot of like folks calling us from different states, like, "How'd you do this?" And we saw it as a no-brainer that a lot of young people's first job is going to be at the Mall of America, and so our goal there is to really try to address all of the needs though that young people can show up to work. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time going over and advocating for young people and helping young people sort of coach through what it means to be employed and how to like advocate for themselves. Some retention rates were sort of shown here. Young people who were connected to Oasis maintained their jobs for an average of 22.8 months in comparison to those who were not working with Oasis. So our housing program, I kind of talked about this already. Right now we have up to 4. We have the potential to have 8 families in that program. Again, a ton of supporting young people with emergency assistance or eviction prevention funds. We also have funding to support a young person who's maybe looking to move into a place, or needing help with like application fees, that sort of thing. So we do a variety of things around housing. And we are a referring agency for bridging. Next slide. All right, so I wanted to share some impact reports in 2020, which I will add that 2020 was really hard for everybody. And so I have seen a little bit of a decrease in the numbers of young people. Just to give you an example, in 2019, I think we served 481 young people. So a little context, but here we go. So in 2020, we served 361 young people. Of those folks, 184 of those people were new. We've had multiple in-person visits and youth contacts. We distributed 713 meals, a lot of miles driven by our case managers, and then we provided just over $22,000 in rental subsidies. And here's some more like demographic specifics. 86% of those young people were youth of color. 24% identifies LGBTQ plus. 28% were parenting or pregnant. Over 50% of them were working or in school. And I think that demyths a lot of myths out there about young people experiencing homelessness, not having a job. And then 34% of those were staying in a place not meant for habitation, 30% with friends or family. All right, some of the common reasons for homelessness. I think this one is, you got to keep going here. Thanks. Poverty, family conflict, escaping from an abusive or unsafe situation. And I think one thing I wanted to add here, especially for the purpose of this here, we obviously do not focus on domestic violence specifically, but we do a ton of work with young people who have that experience, and then do a lot of connecting them to resources like Cornerstone Day One. And so just wanting to add that there. And then another common reason, or some more common reasons, is trying to age out of the foster care or other systems, coming out as LGBTQ, mental illness, a family being incarcerated, and then unintended pregnancies. All right, so homelessness in Minnesota. I don't know who all is familiar with this, but there is an organization called Wilder who does a homeless study account basically every 3 years. And what's really frustrating is that this count is done in one day in October. And in 2018, there were just over 19,000 Minnesotans who were experiencing homelessness on any given night. And again, this is a miscount, I assume it is, because again, we're talking about one day in October. So sorry to backtrack us. So of those folks experiencing homelessness, about 6,000 young people are experiencing homelessness on the state of Minnesota on any given night. And nearly 4 in 10 of those young people were found outside of the shelter system. And some more of the content that came out of that, nearly 46%, half of those young people experiencing homelessness were minors or under the age of 24. And then another stat to share is just that African Americans, American Indians, and youth who identify as LGBTQ are overly represented among the homeless population. Some more stats that came out specific to suburban homelessness. This was 14% of the young people who participated in this survey, kind of helped to calculate or compile this, that young people were less likely to be staying in a shelter. Part of the reason is we know that there's not a lot of youth shelters, number one, but more in our own community. More likely to have been contracted or contacted through outreach, more likely to report that they stayed in an abusive relationship because they had no place to go. Less likely to have experienced sexual abuse or a parent being incarcerated or any sort of juvenile detention experience. And then they're more likely to report mental health issues. So some of the realities for young people experiencing homelessness, we know that there's limited resources. There's long wait time for services, the different vulnerabilities. So people looking to exploit young people are constantly in transition, and this includes places to sleep, even case managers and other supports. They're constantly being triggered. They're marginalized, so a different set of societal systems to have to navigate. Developmental issues. And then with some of our young people, age is critical because they have fewer legal means to gain employment, housing, or other age-restricted options. And then that young people are always in survival mode, doing whatever it is and whatever they can do to survive. Some more culture of homelessness. We often see that young people experiencing homelessness can be close-knit. They often do supporting each other to meet each other's needs. And there's a lot of forming of strong bonds in street family. And then one thing we know is that once young people have experienced homelessness for a long period of time, they tend to shy away from institutions that are designed to help them. So this includes places like shelters, food shelves, kitchens, that sort of thing. For many of our young people, this hiding out behavior stems from mistrust of adult populations, as well as a lack of privacy, personal space, and institutional environments. So here's a slide just to kind of get connected with us. We love donations. We have a pretty up-to-date Amazon wish list. We do have a ton of volunteer opportunities that we would love to see people connect with us for, some that are directly working with young people, and then some that are sort of behind the scenes. You would connect with Nubia or Ran, depending on what it is that you're looking for. So I just encourage you to check out our website and reach out to the www.oasisforyouth.org if you have any interest in volunteering or supporting us in any way. And that concludes what I have to share. Again, I'm Jasmine Green, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today, and hope that I answered any questions, and feel free to reach out to me if you do have any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Jasmine. We do definitely appreciate you being here today as well and sharing. And so then next we will be hearing from, is it Lizelle? And this is from the Legal Aid Office.
Hi, my name's Liesl Zamora. I'm a staff attorney at Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, and I am part of the Immigration Law Project. And so a lot of the information that I have about legal aid is focused on immigration, but that's definitely not all that we do. So legal aid provides civil legal assistance in all of the following areas listed here. We provide assistance with housing matters, family law matters, which could be divorce or custody issues, immigration, which I'll touch on in a little bit more detail later on, disability, senior and youth, which could be just any sort of issue, legal issue that somebody that fits in those categories is experiencing. Also help with state benefits or tax issues, and also consumer. So we, as I said, are a civil legal assistance organization, and so we do not provide any assistance for criminal cases. If you're charged with a crime, you should ask for a public defender, but that's not something that we can assist with. So just some general information for people who may be in a situation where they would need assistance from a lawyer if they are experiencing domestic violence. My slides look like they got a little disconnected from having them on the different sides, but trying to just keep your important documents that you may need in a safe place or with somebody that you trust. As part of a safety plan, I know that a lot of the shelters or advocate services that already talked about, they are able to help forming those safety planning. And so making sure that if you are in a dangerous situation, that you are able to have the resources that you need then if later you are getting the assistance of a lawyer, and then we maybe need documents that so that you can still have access to them. So especially if you are an immigrant, being able to gather and keep records showing that you have been in the United States for a certain period of time, or if you are a permanent resident, showing that you are a permanent resident. Also, memorizing important phone numbers. This could be for your lawyer, but it could also be just family and having an emergency contact so that if you are in need of being able to contact somebody, that you have that number accessible to you. And then just in general, knowing your rights and resources. State Support Services has a lot of information available in our self-help library, which is located at the link on the slide at lawhelpminnesota.org. We have specific lists of resources or information on your rights for all kinds of different categories of what somebody who's experiencing domestic violence might need, but also lots and lots of other areas as well. So, like I said, I am an immigration lawyer, so most of my experience and knowledge is centered on immigration. And so in general, it's very important to make sure that you know your rights as somebody who's living in the United States, knowing when that you have a right to say no to a search of yourself or your car or your home, knowing that you have a right to remain silent if you are being questioned, a right to consult with an attorney. If you are in immigration proceedings, that attorney is not the same as a public defender. You have the right to speak with an attorney, but you don't have a right to have an attorney that's paid for at the expense of the government. You also have a right to leave calmly if you are not under arrest. And so this other link at the bottom gives a much more detailed explanation of what rights are for somebody who is maybe having contact with law enforcement or immigration enforcement. So immigration services specific to legal aid, we primarily serve people who are living in Hennepin and Anoka counties. We only provide services generally for those whose net income is at or below 125% of the federal poverty guidelines. Occasionally there's some wiggle room for that. So if you're in doubt, call our our intake line, and they can check and see. If you are unable to receive services from us, then our intake always tries to refer you somewhere that you may be able to receive services, or at least give you resources to find access to private legal assistance. So our immigration services, particularly for survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault, focus on mainly cases dealing with obtaining status through different humanitarian programs, such as being able to receive a U visa or apply for a U visa as the victim of a crime, applying for a self-petition under VAWA if somebody is married to or the parent or son or daughter of a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Also, T visas for victims of trafficking, that can be sexual trafficking or labor trafficking. We also provide other services such as applications for receiving residency, permanent residency. It says green card, but it's the same thing. And that can be for people who have different bases for it. So again, if you're in doubt of whether or not you might qualify for services, call our intake line and they can screen you and see if it's something that we are able to provide. We also assist youth who are who've been either abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both of their parents in applications for special immigrant juvenile status, as well as applying for citizenship for people who are eligible. We do Daca renewals right now. Initial Daca applications are kind of on hold right now, but we are continuing to do help people apply for renewing their Daca status. And we have some limited immigration court work that we provide as well. So this is our intake information. The general intake line is the first phone number, the 612-334-5970. And then we have a separate immigration intake line, which is 612-332-1441. And you can also always go online at www.mylegalaid.org and fill out a request for assistance there as well.
Okay. So there we would be looking for any questions that were in the chat. I want to thank you all for being here today, providing this information. It was a lot of great information, even programs that I noticed that I could definitely resource these information out to people that are in need. So this event was definitely successful on my behalf, and I just hope that it's successful for everyone else that did attend. And again, we want to apologize for a little bit of delay in getting our slides, but it all turned out perfect. We will be presenting this in Spanish, so there will be a Spanish interpretation of this video that will come out in about 2 to 3 weeks after today's video is done. So we will go ahead and send this all in Spanish again, and you can find that information either on YouTube or the Richfield Police Department's website as well too. We'll post it there so that folks can be able to get this information and it'll be translated in Spanish as well too. I did want to just give out some information that we didn't provide early on, and it was just to give out a little bit of information in regards to domestic violence and just some stats that we had. And that was in 2019. Domestic calls for services, there was 151 calls, and there were 67 arrests in that year. The year of 2020, there was 165 domestic calls, and then there was 83 arrests in that year. And then from January 1st, 21 until October the 11th, there was 137 calls for service, and then there were 28 arrests there. So this is definitely something that is needed. These resources that were provided is available for the community, and we just ask that you all just take action on the resources that we provided on today. And if there was anything else from anyone, Chief, did you have anything to lead with?
I just want to say thanks, Keisha, for moderating this important topic. It's something that we continually progress on when it comes to the Richfield Police Department, and work with our prosecutor, both our in-house prosecutor Martin Costello and also the county attorney's office. And I want to thank everybody for being on today's call. All the information that you presented was great, very resourceful. I enjoyed listening to all the information that you provided, and hopefully we can get that out through the community and cut down on the number of domestic violence cases that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you. And was there anything else? Was there any other questions that possibly came through, or no? We're still good.
No further questions at this time.
All right. Well, thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.